But the truth is, at the end of life, I believe that medicine and spirit connect, and you can't separate them. And that's where my work with as a death doula, I believe that veterinarians, they don't know it, but those of us that work in the end of life are doulas. And we are helping not only the animal, but I'd say 90% of our work is helping the people. And that's really what we do.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
All right, everyone. We have Dr. Ken Gorczyca, CHPV, who is a veterinary home euthanasia practitioner and a companion animal end-of-life doula at A Gentle Rest in San Francisco. And he is also an artist, and he paints pet portraits in memoriam and life. Find his artwork at kengorczyca.com. So welcome, Ken. I would love to start our conversation by asking you a very simple question. What is your favorite snack to eat in the car while you're on the way to either house calls or whatever you're on your way to?
Well, I tend to not really eat, in the car, but I do sometimes go to Amy's for a vegetarian burger. That's my favorite. And I do granola bars or things like that, but I'm not really a big eater. I'm trying to lose weight, so.
Same. I hear you.
Used to be McDonald's, but that's out, so yeah.
Love it. You're a granola guy. I love it. So can you tell me a little bit about how you got into house call practice? I know that right now you're an associate doing veterinary home euthanasia, and also you're working as a end-of-life doula as well in that capacity. Can you tell me how you got into this work? How did you get
You want the long story?
Yeah.
Well, I graduated many years ago, 1983 from Davis, and I practiced for many years. And then, unfortunately, I got sick with AIDS, and so I had to retire and go off work for many, many years. And here I was turning to be, but I didn't stop working in the sense I did a lot of work with Pets Wonderful Support, which helps people with AIDS keep their pets. I founded that organization, and I also founded the Lesbian and Gay Veterinary Medical Association, which is now Pride Veterinary Medical Community. And so I did that for many years. So I was an activist. I kept involved with the profession. I also spent a lot of time in nature. I started to realize that nature is healing. So I started to work with the School of Lost Borders, which takes people on vision fast into the desert. And so I did probably 8 vision fasts over the last decade. And part of that is just to go into nature and try to find my purpose. Really, where am I going? And you have a metaphorical death. You're sitting alone for 4 days and 4 nights in the desert wilderness in Death Valley. That's my favorite place to work. And on one of these vision fasts, the question was, what am I going to do? Here I am. I survived AIDS. I'm a 40-year survivor. And I still felt like I had more time to give back to the profession and to my life. And I kept seeing death around me, these visions of dead people and animals in the sky. And I soon realized that I had experienced death at a young age. I was only 35 when I had to quit work. And I lost, over those first years in practice, I lost maybe 300 clients to AIDS and dozens of colleagues and friends. So I didn't realize at the time, but what I was doing in those early days was being a death doula. I helped people in that moment. And so when I got back from this quest, I really started to do Googling online and saying, well, what's happening in the veterinary world around death and dying? And I found two things. I found CADA, or the Companion Animal Euthanasia Training Academy, and I found the University of Vermont Companion Animal End-of-Life Doula Training Program. And so I immediately signed up for both. And I also realized that my good friend, Ari Rozicki, who's a veterinarian, had founded a Gentle Rest in San Francisco. And so I contacted him and I said, can I come accompany you on one of your days out? And he said, of course, because I've known him since he was a student. And I went out on that first call and I just couldn't believe it. I said, this is my calling. It was just so apparent that I was pulled to this work, and it's evolved over the last 3 years. I've now done probably 2,500 euthanasias. And so with the University of Vermont course, I just really found that material really invigorating. It came out of the human doula work, which is doula means is when women have babies, there's birth doulas. But there's also a death doula that's come out where you help people die. And during the COVID pandemic, Francesca at the University of Vermont created this companion animal course, and so that's been around maybe 4 years now, 5 years. And it sort of grew. And after I took the course, they decided that they're going to need a new veterinary leader for this course. And so I immediately signed up. And so I've been teaching the class with other people for the last 3 years. And we could talk more about that later. But, I was so nervous because I didn't know if I could hit a vein, if I could even do vet. I never thought I'd be in practice again, to be honest, after all those years. But I realized it's like riding a bike. And
Sure is.
And I realized that most veterinarians cannot hit a vein because they have their technicians do it in practice. And so I just had to learn. And now I'm really excellent. So I would tell anyone, don't be afraid of it, because especially in euthanasia where you sedate the animals, there's no problem whatsoever to hit a vein. And if you can't, you do all the other things, the kidney, the liver, the heart, whatever you need to do. And so that's sort of how I got into this house call business. Really it came out of nature, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to talk about that as well, because I think that nature can help everyone, and it's a powerful place to be. Yeah. So thanks for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is very moving and very beautiful what you've said. I've been really into the Kabbalah tradition lately. And there's this beautiful word called ratzon. That's the name of it. That's the calling, the heart's desire that tells you what you have to do. And I heard you speak that principle that you knew right away. And
Yeah,
right?
I did. I couldn't believe it. I never even imagined that kind of work, and
Unbelievable.
I found this whole network of veterinarians and veterinary technicians that are really moving to create this good death for our animal companions, and so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a calling. When I see people doing this type of work, you can feel it. I mean, I think maybe you might even be the most connected to the spirituality of the experience itself. I mean, my question is, you had mentioned Vision Fast and quests and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is? Because I'm familiar with journey work in my own ways, but I would love to know a little bit more about this
Sure.
experience.
I mean,
This is so personal for you.
it
It's
is.
so deeply personal that I want to know more about it.
Sure. Yeah. I had a good friend, a veterinarian, Gene Smith, who was from college and had really gotten into shamanism. And so she introduced me to a lot of that work. And then during I think 2003 to 7, I ended up studying with Michael Harner at the Foundation of Shamanic Studies. And so I really went deep into shamanism and shamanic healing and the spiritual world. And I did it really for my own self, for my own personal healing. They say, don't do that. You have to do it to help people. But I knew that I needed it, and I didn't know I was going to be using that material. But in my practice now, I use it every day. But getting back to the Vision Fast, I found this organization called School of Lost Borders. It's located in Lone Pine, but they do work all across the Western United States. They take about 12 people out into the desert for about 10 days. You have, you do a lot of pre-work together. And then you go out for 4 days and 4 nights into the desert alone with no food. You bring water only. And because when you go into that state, that altered state, it brings you into a connection with nature that you wouldn't, you don't have TV, you don't have your cell phone, you have nothing to distract you. You get to listen to nature, the animals, to the sky. You get to watch the moon rise and fall and the sun rise and fall, which we never do in our modern world. And it's the lost part of our humanity. And so on these events, each one brought me to a new level. I learned a lot about myself, and part of it's interaction with the community that I'm with, and some of it's just being in nature itself. And on this last one, I'll just share a little story that I'm in awe about. But I was in this one spot for 4 days and 4 nights. And lo and behold, there was a lizard that was sitting there with me. And he was there the whole time. He was not afraid of me. And being that I was not a danger to him, I was in a really calm space. I wasn't moving erratically. I was just sitting. He would come over to me and he actually would walk onto my leg and we started to communicate and just in behaviors, and so I would go to sleep. I'd look over and there he was sleeping, and I asked him to tell me about his life. And he pulled me around a rock and eventually he showed me his spouse or his mate. She was a little bit more afraid, I think, but it was the most powerful animal communication experience I ever had. And I think it only can happen when you're in that altered state. I think that maybe it happens with drugs, you can get into that altered state and I'm fine with that. But going into nature in a fasting state is the same thing. And it brings you to that space. And then you come out and then you tell your story to the whole group. And then the leaders then mirror that back to you about what it means. And it's like the ancient Native Americans would do that as well. But all humanity did this. And, Jesus went into the desert. Moses went into the desert. And so it's not just one spirituality, but it's all of us. It's humans. It's our gift from nature, and so that's how I got into it. And I recommend anyone to look it up and do that work. It's great for life transitions or just for healing, and or just for being in nature. I miss it. I can't wait to go again because I really need to be in the desert twice a year. And unfortunately, working sort of takes away that time, and so I'm hoping that this fall I'll get to go back.
Amazing. I'm so moved. I love this material and I love how easily it, flows from your conversation. I have a million directions I want to go from this, but I'll start with, I wanted to ask a little bit more about your work with the open-minded scientist group that you
Sure. Yeah, I got introduced to a guy named Lee, bad with names, but he was at the AVMA meeting. And so what he's doing is he's creating an organization that looks into the moment of death experiences of animals, but also of people around animals. And it's also, we also would look at human experiences as well, but it's really hard to study humans because of all the legal issues. And so he thought maybe it'd be easier to look at end of life issues in animals. And so we just recently did a preliminary survey 2 years ago. And this guy is Lee Van Kraus. So he's a scientist and he's just really into doing this work. And so we just finished a survey, which we sent out to all the Facebook groups for end of life and house calls. And we got 500 veterinarians and veterinary technicians. And so we're going to publish this in the near future, hopefully one of the major scientific journals like Nature or I'm not sure where, but we're going to present the preliminary data at the next meeting in September. But what we find is when you talk to human hospice workers or people that are around people dying, that about 20% of them experience unusual events like electronic malfunctions, or there's a breeze, or all of a sudden the weather changes, or there's different people see different things. You can see a glowing of the body. And we don't know what that means, but I think that there is probably a scientific explanation. As I look into plasma theory, I look at the whole universe is plasma. And we always thought it was dark space out there, but no, it's like this life full, and it's a living, almost a living thing. And so when an animal or a person dies, what happens as the spirit leaves the body, it's not dissipating, it's going back into that greater universe. And so what we found is, all this explains some of the things I've seen. I was at a euthanasia where it was a mother and father and their 6-week-old baby infant, and they had the infant over on the couch and this dog was being euthanized. And at the moment that the heart stopped, this infant started to make this unusual sound. And the parents said they had never heard this sound before. And so it was experiencing something because it really shocked everybody. So we find that young children are more aware because they're not domesticated yet. So they still can see things. Sometimes we have experiences where animals start looking up and our kids look up like they're seeing something. This week, I had a really unusual experience where I just euthanized a 10-year-old Newfie, and it was a beloved dog, and it had prostate cancer. And we were putting it into the car. And all of a sudden, my office phone started playing music. I mean, out of the blue. And I've never had that happen before. And that's probably the second most common thing where music pops up on your phone, on your radio that wasn't expected. And we don't know what is that, And so I think as we become more aware and just be on the lookout, you might find it yourself. But most of us never look for it, And when I ask veterinarians, when I talk to, because I do a lot of public speaking, and they're like, well, what are you talking about? That's woo-woo, But the truth is, at the end of life, I believe that medicine and spirit connect, and you can't separate them. And that's where my work as a death doula, I believe that veterinarians, they don't know it, but those of us that work in the end of life are doulas. And we are helping not only the animal, but I'd say 90% of our work is helping the people. And that's really what we do, And so I'm going to be speaking this summer, introducing reimagining euthanasia with a death doula perspective. It took me 3 years to get accepted. I kept pushing and pushing. But whenever there's something out of the box, there's a resistance from the profession. That's just, that's natural. With my work with AIDS, it took 10 years for them to start to talk about it, even though every practitioner was dealing with clients with AIDS. But when I first started practicing in San Francisco, you get put right onto the local VMA, that's what they do, And I stood up and I said, guys, we're all getting asked questions about AIDS, and physicians were telling their patients to give up their pets because they were afraid of zoonotic diseases. And I said, this is pure medicine for these people. You can't tell them to give up their pet. And I said, we need to bring in the public health department to talk to us. And they said, no, AIDS is not our problem. And so I quit. And the next day I found Pets Are Wonderful Support. I became the founding veterinarian. I wrote the Safe Pet Guidelines, which helped educate physicians and veterinarians. And that material is now on the CDC website. It took 10 years, but they incorporated it. But it shows you there's resistance to change or things that are unusual. And I feel the same about death. I think that that's another frontier for our profession, and that all veterinarians can be better at it. And that's my goal, is to try to help them be better in practice. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're such a mover and a doer, and you've added so much already to the profession. I wanted to say that I very much am highly familiar with the resistance of the profession in a number of ways. And I've also applied to speak at AVMA. I only applied once, but I got rejected. I wasn't deeply surprised or anything like that. But
Yeah.
I do have some unconventional perspectives. And I'm an integrative vet, so I'm very used to being associated with woo-woo or being questioned on that level. And I've also just opened a new program called Soulshine Space for veterinarians, for kind of people like us who recognize that the medicine and the spirituality are one and the same. And especially if you're doing end-of-life care, transitions, integrative.
I'd really like to learn more about that.
I will absolutely share more about that. It's a monthly membership, low cost. And we meet once a month and we discuss, we journal, we intention, and we discuss a subject of something related to world healing of some tradition. Mysticism, spirituality. We just talked about Kabbalah, and that's why that word was on my mind.
Sure.
Actually, I think that if you haven't listened to it, I think you might enjoy, and our listeners, if they haven't listened to it, the episode I recorded with Dr. Erica Zelfand. She is a psychedelic therapist, doctor, naturopath, and we talked about how the sickness that we are experiencing, depression, anxiety, mental illness, about like this emptiness within us that's so rampant. It's the missing ingredient is allowing us to acknowledge soul, allowing ourselves to acknowledge spirituality, connection between us and to higher.
Yeah, it's not religion. See, that's the problem. We all get disconnected by religion, and I was brought up Roman Catholic. I was an altar boy. I find that there is a very big place for that in our lives. I find it useful, and for the community and for people. And we've lost even some of that, but its spirit itself is different, and is lost in our society for sure. And the same with death. Death is not able to be talked about. And I believe that our animal companions are one of the last vestiges of nature in our lives, number one, because we used to live in nature and now we live separate. But the animals are still there. And so they teach us, they keep us grounded in nature. And even at the end of life, I tell my clients this all the time, the last lesson that they're teaching you is about endings and about death. And it's okay. It's okay. In fact, I hope that we could all be privileged to be at home with our loved ones on the sofa or bed as our spirit is released, and because that's really what the power of in-home euthanasia is. It's a privilege for sure. Not everyone can afford it or have access to it. It's not everywhere. And we can talk more about my own practice, but I do a lot of ceremony, ritual, storytelling. I really find that it's really helpful to people. So, yeah.
That's amazing. You're leading right into the next questions I was going to ask. What you're saying is so powerful. You mentioned that you incorporate your shamanic studies into your in-home euthanasia. And you mentioned a few things that maybe sounded like you are working with synchronicities, maybe quantum physics. Does any of that play into either your thought process or anything that you bring? I mean, you mentioned the music coming on.
Yeah, no, that was like, I kept going, I was so irritated because all of a sudden this music was coming on. I go, what's that? And it was my phone, and I don't even know how it got turned on the music. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, but synchronicities. I believe, in my experience, at the end of life, that there are a lot of synchronicities that happen in that moment. And one of the most recent ones, and it's one of the reasons we didn't get to speak last month because I had a salivary gland removal because of a stone. And so I was on this surgery table. They were putting me under, and, there's like all these nurses and doctors, and they're just asking, hey, what do you do? So what, I'm half loopy. I said, I'm an in-home euthanasia vet, and they go, oh, I did that with my animal. And then all of a sudden the doctor looks at me and says, do you work in Marin County? And I said, I do. And he says, I think you euthanized my dog. And I had. And we talked afterwards, and he and his 2 children, his wife were there. But I mean, that to me was just like, I just couldn't believe it, and this happens all the time with different people that you wouldn't expect to meet. But I mean, I meet so many people, I can't even remember them after that day is over because there's so, but it's a powerful hour that I'm with them. It's a real sacred moment that I'm able to give them. But I wish I could remember all of them, because there's amazing people. At the end of life, you get to see these animals and their stories that are so powerful, and it's, anyway, that's my.
So powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we cut straight to the heart of a person's everythingness. Like you see them and you meet them in a moment of deep grief. That's the pure them. You're not seeing any fronts. You're not seeing facade. You're not seeing mask. I mean, they can mask. Everyone can mask, right? But this is the purest version of a person that you're ever going to get, in my opinion, and I think there's something very, as you said, sacred about being with a person and an animal in that state of transition and grief.
Oh my God, yes. And that's the part that I look forward to every visit. It's just, and I mean, I can talk a little bit about my practice if you like.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, I would love to hear about the practice that you are doing as an associate, I would like to hear about your teaching at the University of Vermont, about the end-of-life doula work you do, and maybe if you want to talk a little bit even about the practice that you're wanting to start on your own, up to you.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. So Adjunctive Rest is a great organization in San Francisco, and I'm so privileged to work there. We're open 7 days a week. So we have like 4 doctors who work there. And so we're basically a resource for the community. So we always take same day appointments, or people can plan ahead, or they can change. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, and then they decide that the animal's better for a day. And so, it's a real resource. And so I'm really grateful to have gotten to learn that. But my practice has really evolved. I mean, when I first went out with Ari, it was like, all you had to do was like say 8 sentences, and that was it. You could be quiet. You could just be present. And that's all you need to do. I mean, I think all veterinarians that work at the end of life or do euthanasia, we all try our best. And so everyone has their own power, and so what I found is I started doing ceremony. I always call them in the morning when I get to the office, and I want to have a connection with them because we have a receptionist that do all the pre-work. And they're always so grateful that they hear my voice, and I try to calm them. And a lot of times they have questions. Then I tell them I'll text them when I'm on my way, and we're going to do the paperwork real quick. And then I'm going to sit down with you, and we're going to really meet your pet. I want to hear their whole story. And so I sit down with them, and I ask how they met, how they got their name, all the way through. We spend maybe 20 minutes just, and have they stolen the turkey off the table? Did they ever get lost? Did you dress them up for Halloween? And people start to laugh. They smile, even at this most critical moment of their, when you're losing your beloved, they still can find some joy, and I always tell them,
Right now.
yeah, and I always tell them that the end of life surely is full of grief and emotion, but it's only one side of this whole coin of this animal's life. And so we have to look at it all the way through. And so I think I help them. And then I say, we're going to do the sedation. I go over that, and if they can eat, if they're eating, we always offer food, and chocolate's okay, and cake and ice cream and, whatever. I had one kid who's 8 said, "Oh no, we can't give chocolate." I said, "It's okay." No, we didn't do it because he was like taught never to give chocolate, and that was cute. I find children really empowering. They're so innocent and yet so wise, and then we do the euthanasia. And I say, after the euthanasia, is it okay if I do a ceremonial ritual? And I already told them that in the beginning. And I'd say 95% of the people are absolutely fine with it. A few others say, "Well, I'm not religious." I said, "Well, it's not religion. We're just doing it. It's a rite of passage we're doing." And so basically I have some Tibetan bells. So I marked a moment with a sound. And then I say, "Is it okay if I use some sage or some sandalwood?" So I light that and offer that over the body and tell them, that I hope that they remain in their dreams and in their hearts and their animal spirit guide forever. And then I sit down and I repeat the life story for them in that moment. And then I give a poem. And then I also offer them a pink quartz heart. I put it on the body, and I let them keep that as a keepsake and tell them that this embodies the spirit of their animal. And some people they tell me they hold it for days afterwards, because it gives them something. And then after the ceremony, I close it with some bells, and then they get to do their private time with the body. And then we wrap the body in a blanket. It's like, I call it a shroud, because we're basically shrouding the body. And I didn't even know that term until I went out in the desert again for a death retreat and learned all about death and dying from the human side. And so I realized that's what that is. When we never put them in bags or anything like that in front of the client, And then I go home and I take that material, that story, and I create a poem for them, an obituary poem. And I use ChatGPT, and it's really easy to do. And I also take pictures of the animals. And if their animal is not able to be photographed because they're in a really bad shape, I ask to see their favorite picture. And I use some apps and I create some art pieces for them. And so I send them this poem with the art piece. And some people are just so grateful because they realize how much I care, and about their relationship. And no one's ever asked them their life story of their pet ever, And so, I know it's not everyone can do that. It's extra work. It takes me a lot more time to do all that, but I feel really emboldened to do it because I see what power it has. And then, of course, we take the body and I have asked them to help if they want. It's like a vigil carrying the cat or the dog. And so I try to make it in the terminology that we use for the human condition. Because in the old days, we keep our animals overnight, and our ancestors, my grandmother was in her living room in her coffin for a day, and that's gone, but my own animals, I've kept them in vigil overnight and with candles and flowers. And I have clients that want to do that. And I have no problem whatsoever. I mean, they go through rigor mortis and it's okay. One day it's not going to be a problem. And so I encourage that if that's what they want, or they do their own burial or cremation through our service. But yeah, so that's my practice. And I try to share that with other veterinarians, and I learn from everyone, it's powerful. I can move on to the Vermont class. I believe, and this is what I've learned over these 3 years that I've been teaching this class, that at the end of life, the veterinarian or the veterinary technician and spirit come together. Medicine and spirit are combined in that moment. And we all are death doulas. Even though death doula is supposed to be a non-medical person that helps someone transition, there's supposed to be this in between the professional and the client. But we are both, because we're a unique profession where we're working with the people and the animals. So you can't separate it. And so I'm trying to encourage everyone to take these classes. There's a whole movement of pet death doulas out there, different courses, but the one at the University of Vermont was the first. And for me, it's the best just because that's the one I know. And I'm encouraging, I think, or honestly, I don't know if veterinarians have the time or the energy to do all that work, but veterinary technicians and the veterinary staff are the ones that really are the I would call the end-of-life navigators. And I think every practice should have one, or have a team that does that. That's their job. And because right now, I think a lot of people are, "Oh no, we have to do the euthanasia and it's the worst thing," and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't have to be. You can actually create a chapel room. You can do so much, and that's where you can learn just to be present with people. It's how you answer the phone, how, if someone calls and they're going to do euthanasia, you drop everything. You say either I'm going to call you back or you talk to them right there. I mean, that's when they need you, and so this class, it's now a 6-week class, and it's online, and it's about 20 people per class. And we're just expanding. We're hiring 2 new veterinarians to be part of this and just to try to teach. And there's also the pet death doula. That's an individual person that actually are starting their own practices, perhaps, where they try to help with all the loopholes. And, some people are really needy and they need that. And so there are people that are trying to do, community ceremony. But that's something that the profession is sort of hesitant, oh no, who are these people? Can I try, But I do believe that they could be beneficial, and especially end of life work. We all are doing this work, the receptionists, the call centers, that, that's the crematoriums, that's what they do, and they just don't know it yet, that they already have that title, That's my feeling.
Well, I'm finding myself feeling quite emotional listening to the way you were doing your ceremonies and honoring these animals. You brought me to tears, and thank you for that. It's good to be moved. It's good to release emotions and to care. It's very easy for us to lose track of the emotionality of it and for it to become rote. And I think on that same note, as you were speaking, I was thinking of that expression, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care, right? I see that manifested 100% in everything that you are doing. And I think in addition to like the ceremony, I also was noting your attention to things like consent, like trauma-informed paradigms, because everyone has a different spiritual paradigm, be it a type of spirituality or no spirituality at all, right? And the fact that you ask for this consent about the ceremony and the way you're kind of like following and being with people in every moment that comes up, that's really beautiful. That's really unusual in veterinarians. Hi, it's Dr. Eve here. As you know, as veterinarians and veterinary professionals, we pour our hearts into caring for animals every day. But who's holding space for your spirit to shine? I created Soulshine Space for vets to be that space. Soulshine Space for veterinarians is not your run-of-the-mill membership. It is a portal where science meets spirituality, where we can hold evidence and intuition in the same hand. It's for those of us who can hold both the tangible and the mystery at the same time. It's for those of us who feel the call that there's more to this life than our job description. Join our monthly gatherings where we explore meditation, forest bathing, aromatherapy, herbalism, breathwork, plant and mushroom ID, sound healing, healing modalities from all around the world, as well as special subjects in psychology and spirituality, plus so much more. With all of this designed to nourish both the left and the right brain sides of the healer within you. You'll get to connect with other veterinarians who understand both your dedication to medicine and a desire for meaning and connection beyond the clinical. For under $100 a month, you can join a community that sees all of who you are. No commitment is needed. You can come or go as you please. And if you are listening to this podcast, as a huge thank you, you'll get a special discount off your membership. This offer is available for a limited time and rules and restrictions do apply. So check out the link and your discount code in the show notes. And if this calls to your heart, I hope you'll join us today. I'm so excited to see you inside our Soulshine community for vets, and I can't wait to welcome you in. I'm sure you know that you're unusual and special, and like just everything you're saying is just like, holy shit, man, you're amazing. Like what a
Well, I don't know if I know
human.
that, but thank you. I guess you get wise as you get older, but I think life experience too has brought me here. I realize we didn't even talk about my art. I'm an artist.
That's what I'm about to ask you about.
I read your mind. Yeah. And during that, after I got sick, I was always an artist. My grandfather taught me how to paint by numbers when I was 7 or 8, and he taught me how to garden, and he gave me my first pet, goldfish, so he really gave me 3 things that became very powerful in my life. I'm an avid gardener. I've had many large gardens over the years. Of course, I've had many pets. I became a veterinarian, but painting became my passion. And I started really painting actively after I met my husband-to-be, Lawrence. We met in Sydney, Australia. And after that, whenever I met, he lived in Vienna at the time, and I decided, I'm going to start painting again. And I painted ever since. And I only recently, because coming out as an artist is like coming out of the closet. And I had my first solo show about 2.5 years ago in New Mexico. And it was a lot of my desert paintings. Whenever I go out on these vision fasts, I always brought my paints. And so I would do 4 or 5 paintings as well. And I find that when I'm out there in that sacred space, that my art is also able to come out of me that way. And so I've been doing that. I also do pet portraits. I figured that's my veterinary connection. And so I offer pet portraits to my clients, and I'm starting to get some. And I've been on the cover of 2 JAVMAs. I did this polar bear behind me was on the cover in 2020, maybe, or 21. And I just did one on January. It was called Veterinarian and Assistant. One of my classmates was in a car with his dog. And so I continue to do art. I prefer to do plein air art in nature or my gardens. I like to do that. That's because that's where my spirit comes out. I do animal portraits, and I'm good at it, but it takes a lot more energy to capture that spirit, but I just gave one out to a client the other day, and they just loved it. So I felt it was a euthanasia patient, and she asked me to paint. And so I try to capture their spirit. I learn their story and try to create that in the art. But I'm also part of another group that I helped co-found with Yoli, is Vet Art Now. And we do art shows at veterinary conferences, and we have 22 artists. There's a whole group of artists that are veterinarians are artists. I mean, we all have veterinary medicine is an art, but a lot of us are closet artists. And so we're trying to empower us to come out. And so we have a website, vetartnow.com. You can check it out. It's not finished on the website, but I'm going to be finishing it this week or so.
That's wonderful. I agree that we're all artists. I mean, if you've ever read The Artist's Way by
oh, yes, many times.
Classic, right?
Yeah, I have.
So in that capacity, yes. And I think, as you said, veterinary medicine is an art. And I mean, you're reminding me actually, back in the day, I'm a flautist, so I'm a musician. That's like very artistic outlet, right?
Sure.
I play all like world flutes and whistles and dings and dongs and this and that. And it's my heart. It's the breath, it's the air, it's the mind-body connection, spirit, soul, everything all in one when I'm playing the flute. And there was a time kind of on the subject of physical art, photography, things like that. I had an idea that I never carried out, but I still think maybe one day I'll do it. And the idea was to photograph musicians with their cats, because musicians always have cats. Some have dogs, but it's usually cats. A photograph of the musician with their cat and their musical instrument. Like capture that trio.
The energy. Yeah, no, for sure. The cats are part of the music, their purr, it helps, and just their presence is powerful. Yeah.
Other than the fact that my cat runs away so she doesn't run when I'm playing native flutes or the bansuri or, some of the lower pitched alto instruments. But when I play like Western flute, the, silver flute, she's out of there.
Yeah, I understand. It's now
different pitches.
Even when I do my ringing my bells, sometimes, there's always animals around, and sometimes they're like, it hurts their ears, I think, But I can talk a little bit about Sonoma County. I've lived up here. I live in San Francisco, but also have a place up in Sonoma County in the Russian River. I've been here almost, I think, 40 years now. And it's been my soul place. It helped me get through AIDS. That's probably where my gardens are best. And so I just decided recently I'm going to start helping the county with euthanasia as well. And I've gotten to meet all the different euthanasia vets, and I'm going to start taking overflow, just to go slow. I'm going to create an organization called A Beloved Farewell. And that's going to be a website that I'm going to try to make it into a really go-to place for end of life. But also I do lectures. And so it's part of my lecture stuff, part of my art. I want to have my art on there. And then, of course, service for euthanasia, because I'm hoping that I can really create a special practice for people that want spirituality, and that's going to be word of mouth mostly. And I love doing euthanasias at the beach or in a park or wherever people feel most comfortable for their animal. And I want to encourage that. So we'll see where it goes. I love it up here. But I really love the clients in San Francisco. That's really amazing. It's an amazing city, to be honest. And it's an animal city. Everyone just loves animals. St. Francis, of course, is our patron saint. And that really comes over into the animal world. And my heart and soul is there. All the organizations I founded. I'm really involved with Muttville now, which is the organization that helps old dogs be adopted out. And if anyone gets a chance, if they're in San Francisco, please stop by the new Muttville campus. It's 3 buildings. It's the first, it's not a shelter in a sense, but they bring in these older dogs from all over, and there's no cages. It's all open, free couches, and they have volunteers that help foster them. And people, I run into these clients that have adopted older dogs, and they're just an amazing people because they just want to help this animal live its life out in its golden years in a way that's positive. And sometimes you adopt them and they're dead within a week. That happens. Or even a month, and that's something you have to accept. but many of them go on and on for many, many years. And so I've done some public speaking at their campus, and I'm really excited that I'm going to have my first art installation there. They're going to allow me to do 9 paintings of dog portraits and in their education center. And so I'm really excited to finally get my art involved in my practice as well. And so that's hopefully will be done by this summer, but I have 6 chosen and I still have to find 3 more. But
that's amazing. I love how you're combining the art with the veterinary, and I'm familiar with Muttville. That's super awesome. I also love the Russian River. I've actually had some very significant spiritual experiences at the Russian River.
Really? All
It
right. But honestly, it's a spiritual place.
It is.
The redwoods, the whole valley at one time had the largest accumulation of biological mass in the entire world was the Russian River. They chopped it all down to build San Francisco, but it still has that spiritual beauty. And they now are creating parks along the river. We now have towards the mouth of the Russian River along Monterey, they just now have created multiple parks. So we keep going forward. But yeah, no, it's a very old river. It's very windy. And I think there's a lot of spirit there for sure. That's what
Really
for me, it's been that way it helped me survive. So I believe that,
Yeah, you said that for sure. I believe that. So we're about to do a little bit of a hard pivot to a different subject. But before we do that, I wanted to let you know and let our listeners know about this amazing book that I just finished reading. It's called The Awakened Brain by Lisa Miller. Are you familiar with it?
I read it. Yes. Yeah.
You did. What did you think?
I loved it. Yeah.
So good. She's a PhD researcher and not psychiatrist, a psychologist, researcher, professor at Columbia. And her work with science, fMRIs, twin studies, it's so airtight that it's really a relief to be look, there really, really, really is actually some scientific basis for the woo. And it's not just woo woo. It really isn't, And so as we've been speaking, I've been we got to talk about this book for a second at least. Of course.
Sure.
Love that.
Yeah. No, there's so many books. The one I want to put a plug in for is Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins.
Oh yeah.
I've listened to it now 15 times. When I'm driving, I always listen to podcasts.
So good.
And I just love it. I'm going to get a tattoo. Let them, I just feel that we have to just let people be. That's one of our biggest issues in our lives. We try to, not that we want to control people, but we don't realize that there's nothing we can do about who they are or what they want to think. And we think, and that really is a release for us, I think everyone could benefit from that. I have to get my husband to listen to it. He hasn't yet.
Oh, I love it. I've been following Mel Robbins' work. I haven't read Let Them Theory, but I've read many excerpts and I've read quotes.
Unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
She's
over it.
She's amazing. I'm so glad I found her. Yeah.
Oh, I love that you're going to get a tattoo of that. That's deep. So we've had such an incredible conversation. I feel like I could stay on this call with you all day. I want to close up the episode here by doing another hard pivot back into what we were talking about originally. And I'd like to see if you have any wisdom that you'd like to share as someone who is doing in-home euthanasia and perhaps as someone who's on the brink of starting your own in-home euthanasia practice. What thoughts do you have to share? What kind of wisdom is coming to you that you might be able to share with others who maybe...
Well, I just think that there's a lot of resources out there. I find that this job is really lonely, honestly. There's very limited interaction with other colleagues at work because you do your job alone. And so it's really, you're independent, and that's the part I think I have the most difficulty with, because I'm a type of person that wants to share cases. I want to be part of that. And
you're a connector. You're very much a connector.
And that's okay. That's not how our business is set up. It's built to be independent. And so I find that when I go to online, I'm able to share. And as I go speaking, I meet all these people, that are like-minded. And there's a lot of us out there. But as for other wisdom, I think that don't be afraid of death, and don't be afraid of leaning into spirit. I think that if you're pulled to it, it's okay if you're not. I think that it's most of us in this work, if not all of us, do a great job. And people are so, so appreciative of having someone come to their house to help them in this moment of need, And so I think whatever you do in a kind way is going to be useful, and they'll just be so grateful to you. But it's not for everyone. In our profession, we have compassion fatigue. And I know that in brick and mortar practices, euthanasia is a real issue for the staff. And for the veterinarians, if you're doing 5 or 6 a day, that's a big deal, and you're dealing with clients that you've treated and tried to save all these years. And so in some ways, I think that home euthanasia vets are actually a asset to the brick and mortar vets because we can take away this moment. We're not stealing clients. In fact, you're going to keep your client if you refer to us because, you're going to get them back in a good space where if you do euthanasia yourselves and you don't do a good job, studies show you're going to lose them as clients. 20% automatically will not come back because they are reminded that the clinic is where their pet died. And sometimes I talked to some people recently and they said, even if their pet died in one room, the chapel room, they said, make sure that door is closed because if they come in and see the door open, they have these negative thoughts, and so I think that's something the profession needs to really look at. And you could do ceremony, you can do things in your own practice, storytelling, or, make sure you wrap them in blankets. You don't ever want to put them in a plastic bag in front of a client. But we hear of that, even home euthanasia vets to do that. I go, what in the whatever? I mean,
it's right.
In our practice in San Francisco, we use recyclable cloth bags and the crematorium sends them back. We wash them and then we use them over because we're a green practice and we try to really promote, we have electric cars and we try to just do everything green. We do aquamation, which I don't know if people are familiar with, but it's the water-based cremation. And so I think that's really useful for people that can use that. Other things, I just think keep reaching out, and join groups like Eve's group. I know you can talk about that more. And I think there's a whole movement of end of life in this country, and so I'm really, I'm just glad to be part of this community. And I hope I can keep sharing my wisdom, and I'm willing to talk to anybody. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram or through my practice. And as my website evolves, hopefully that'll be a resource for people too, because I just want to put as much help to clients, that we can do, and I think that's all we can do as veterinarians is try, and so thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say that I loved your comments about the plastic bag. Get the hell out of here with the plastic bags. No, no, no. Like never, ever. I rarely say things like never, 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 but that's one of them. And it also reminded me, I loved all the options that you mentioned. I have one student in my concierge vet mastermind. We were just talking about, we had just sort of like come up with the idea that she has a family member who does sewing and making, fabric things. And she's going to bring her family into her business so that she can have this family member make shrouds for the
I love it.
personal homemade. Like, that's so beautiful.
No, shrouding, I mean, we use blankets and that's fine. But I think that it could even be more detailed, or more personal, but I just think just wrapping them in a blanket, or we put the cats into a basket, and cover them a little bit. And that's just, I think that brick and mortar should do the same. Some clients, they want to hold them and dance with them, and I heard someone in the clinic say, oh my God, no, we can't allow that because they might soil them. I go, well, they're not worried about soiling. I mean, urine is going to be like a baptism. Believe me, clients, encourage them to be able to do these things, but I think we're all fearful of death and the dead body, and it's not necessary, but that's an individual learning curve, I guess. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this has been a wonderful, very moving conversation. Literally brought me to tears. So thank you for that. It means a lot. And I'm sure everyone who's listening has gotten so much out of this. Thank you for your openness and all of your contributions to all of these organizations you've formed and all of the talks you've given and all the education you do and the way you take such good care of our patients. So in closing, what I normally do is, since we're in the House Call Vet Cafe, I'll ask you what's your favorite beverage to drink. But I wanted to say, in honor of both the Vet Doula Cafe and the House Call Vet Cafe, what beverage would you like to order before we close up for the day?
I would say coffee is my
Okay. With milk and
drink.
sugar?
No, black.
Black.
And tea. My husband drinks tea, so I'm drinking more tea. It's probably good to be away from caffeine, but it's my one vice, and so we have a European coffee maker. He's Austrian. So he insisted that we have one of these, automatic things. So I can just push a button and it makes a cup of coffee. And so that's my thing. Yeah. What about you?
Well, right now I'm sipping on some decaf mushroom coffee from Four Sigmatic, and I have some herbs in there. I've got shatavari in there. I've got, what else do I have? I have some turmeric in there and some ginger also, and a little bit of almond milk.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's what I'm having.
Kira, you want to come up?
This has been wonderful. So I would love to hear, where can people find you?
This is Kira.
Hi, Kira.
She's my soul dog, and I
Yes.
sometimes take her on with me during the winter as my assistant in the car, and she accompanies the bodies back to the office, and people just love seeing a living dog with me, and she likes to be with me. She's my COVID pup, and so has separation anxiety, and so she needs to be around people, and so I'm really grateful for her. She brings me down to the moment, the truth of just being here in nature. As I say, there are our last vestiges of nature in our lives, and they give us so much as humans. And I think they're going to help heal our divides as well. That's my last saying, because we all love animals. If we could all use that to bring us together, I think we'll all be a better society. So
I love that. I'm so glad she could join us. If you were watching or if you're listening to this episode in audio, please know that you can also watch this episode and all of the House Call Vet Cafe episodes on YouTube, and you'll get to see this adorable little pup. And before we close out for the day, how can people find you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Ken Gorczyca. I'm on Instagram. You can look me up at A Gentle Rest. I'll be a Beloved Farewell website will be up and running down the road. And I guess they can contact you to get my contact information. So
Sure.
Yeah.
You got it.
But keep up your good work. I'm really glad to meet you. And I know you're a force to help all of us. So I really appreciate that. And I look forward to meeting in person soon. Oh, you're in LA, right?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay, because I'm going to be there next week. Maybe
Oh my God.
I might look you up.
Reach out. Okay, look me up.
Right.
All right, Dr. Ken, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Can't wait to connect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as The House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for House Call Vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.